Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line. We are talking about educational savings accounts. A shorthand for that is vouchers. And is it the right program in Tennessee? We have with us Braden Boucek. He is Vice President of Legal Affairs, the Beacon Center of Tennessee. And Shaka Mitchell. He is the Tennessee State Director of the American Federation for Children. They both support educational savings accounts. Obviously, very passionate beliefs on both sides, and we've had the other side on. Now we have this side on, and some good calls. So let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Ann. Hello, Ann.
Good evening. Over the last year, something that has impressed me have been the parents that I have seen through my children and the strength that has formed in them as teachers, and the fact that they have grown and have realized that they can do this, and homeschooling is an option, and their interest in the vouchers and whether the viability of using those funds for tutoring and the neighborhood school is a stronger option now, and they're being more comfortable with it. So those voucher dollars can be used for the computer and something other than just let me run to the nearest white Catholic school and convert from being a Protestant, or running to the nearest private school. But something you just said startled me. Exactly how many children are eligible for these vouchers? Because you've chosen the two largest districts and the two most diverse districts. But if I heard you correctly, less than 5,000 students are eligible. So first they have to meet your criteria, and then what percentage of our students will actually be eligible for this voucher that will not cover tuition? And I am Catholic, and I know what those tuition fees are for the baptized child. So you can find private tuition maybe for $10,000, but you're not going to find it very close.
Right.
So I'd like.
So you want to know the number? Okay.
I want to know what percentage of children in Memphis are going to get these funds, and what percentage in Davidson County.
Okay.
Yes, and since this is passed, and it's gone through passing phase, you should know that percentage.
Okay. I think you know that percentage. You did say a number earlier, but okay. Let's say this court rules in your favor. The legislation that passed. How many are eligible in each county?
Yeah. So the numbers will change a little bit year to year because it's based on the income of a family, right? And so the larger family size, it goes up a little bit. So, for instance, I believe for a family of four, that income cap is about $70,000. And so if you're thinking about Metro Nashville Public Schools, kids who live in that district, and Shelby County school systems, that accounts for about 200,000 students total. There are somewhere in the range of 65% of those students would be eligible for this ESA. About 65% of those students. So that's, somebody do that math really quickly, 130,000 students. There would be 5,000 ESAs in the first year, and if there's demand for it, it's already built into the law that the number can grow. And this is also something that I think, frankly, for folks who are naysayers who don't think this program is going to work, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't get bigger. And so what's the risk? Let's try something and see if it works. But no, great question about how many families could use it. About 5,000, and that number could continue to grow year over year.
And how do you select that 5,000? So part of it would be income, but you're saying there would be a lot of people that would be eligible income-wise. How do you select that 5,000? Because there's the argument with charter schools that they perhaps sometimes, and I don't want to get in trouble for this, maybe this argument's not right, but I've heard this argument. They cherry pick, okay? They pick maybe kids that, well, they cherry pick kids. So how will you pick the 5,000 that will be eligible in that first year?
Yeah, it's a lottery basis. And again, remember that the total universe would qualify based on income, right? So these are not families that live in Belmead predominantly. There may be a few families in Belmead that qualify based on income. I doubt it. But these would all be lower income. If it went to a lottery as well, students who are in the lowest performing schools also receive priority, right? So they kind of move to the front of the line. So I do think that the legislature did a pretty good job of trying to think about, all right, where's the need the greatest? How do we address that? And
so somebody in the lowest income, they decide they want to do this, so they get $7,000. As Ann said, and as I asked earlier, it's going to be very hard to find a private school. So I guess you could do a tutor or buy a computer, but realistically, again, what are they going to do with the $7,000? And I'll let Braden, I'll let you answer that. They take $7,000 and they're not going to go to a private school. Let's say they're not going to be able to go to a private school. I think that's going to be very hard. Some get in, great. They get financial aid, great, whatever. But what do you do if you can't get financial aid? And again, you're already on the lower income spectrum. What are you going to do with that money?
Well, I mean, I think that as we sit in 2021, the idea that we can figure out how to educate people through online options is anything but speculative. Everybody, particularly in Shelby County and Davidson County, now knows that we can do this. So there's a robust market out there for online schooling options in the hypothetical scenario in which you posed. But to more broadly answer your question about what are you going to do with the $7,000, the answer is whatever you want to, as long as it's educationally related. And that's really what's incredible about the program and why it's so innovative. It just is something that if you want to do homeschooling, if you want to do tutoring, if you want to do online options, you can do it. And there's flexibility like never before because kids are not a one-size-fits-all approach. The final point I'll point out, Ben, is that it really isn't a small number of students who are going to be eligible for financial aid. Like the numbers show that 70% of students will receive some form of financial aid. So, and all of this, Ben, exists in the status quo, meaning there's not a marketplace that's responsive to this yet. And, it's hard to speculate as to what's going to happen. But once the ESA program is up and robust, there's no reason to think that why it won't create a healthy marketplace of people competing for ESA families the same way that we see in any other healthy marketplace. Okay. All right, let's go to Mike. Hello, Mike.
Hey, good evening, Ben, and good evening to your two guests. My aunt was an educator in the public national Davidson County school system, and I remember 20 years ago, I asked her, and this is after she had obtained her EDD at Vanderbilt Peabody School of Education, what's this charter thing? What is these vouchers? What's it all about? And basically she said, it depends on who you are. If affluent neighborhood middle class, upper middle class, are fluent of being able to take advantage of that, it's going to help them. But basically, lower income, it's going to help some, but not all. And those remaining have to deal with money that $7,000 or whatever that was taken out of that public school system, in this case, Davidson County or Shelby County. It's going to be a deficit. You can't expect something that was already not at its best keep running unless it's supplemented. You don't have, when you buy a car, tires are going to last forever. Eventually, you're going to have to repair them, or you're going to end up with a lot of damage and riding on the rims. So you have to fortify, and you have to support, and you need to get private entities, these major corporations, Amazon, Dell again, they've done some things. But we've got to help our public school systems and not take away from the limited budget that they have right now. You're just basically going to leave these remaining kids and the remaining schools without the funding they need to do repairs and do modern updating like solar panels or whatever. So that's what you told me. That was 20 years ago. And then I basically understood, yeah, it can benefit some, but in the long term, it's definitely putting public school systems at a deficit to one day there may not ever be any more public school systems. And I don't think a public intelligence would want that. And that's basically all I have to say.
All right, well, Mike, I appreciate that call. All right, what do you say to that? You can both answer that. Who wants to take it first?
Sure, I'll start. You know what's happened in the 20 years since Mike had that conversation? The cost of funding for public schools has skyrocketed per pupil, and the quality has gone down. So we've been one single approach since basically the 1950s, which is to throw more money at public schools. And it's produced worse and worse results. And what the numbers show is that when we throw more money at public schools, it doesn't go to solar panels and it doesn't go to better paid teachers. It goes to administrators that don't actually increase the overall cost and quality of the education to begin with. So we need to try something innovative. And, to the caller's concern that we're going to be leaving public schools underfunded or that we're going to be leaving kids behind, we are not the first state to try this approach. School choice has been tried in many other states. We are, if anything, far behind the curve and have the benefit of 20 years of experimentation that other schools don't have. So when Mike had his conversation, it might have been theoretical, but it isn't any longer. And I hope Shaka can find the opportunity to talk about what school choice has meant in Florida, which has an incredibly robust school choice program. But the most recent data that came out assessing school choice success in Florida actually showed that, to Mike's concern, the schools that showed the most improvement were the schools that were under the most pressure from school choice. So in other words, the more schools have students exiting to use school choice, the more responsive the schools become and the more the students who are still in that public school system benefit.
Okay. And Shaka, well, I'll restate what he said, and then you take it from there. But I mean, he's saying essentially public schools are struggling. There's data that would indicate that. They're having to educate a whole bunch of students, lots of diversity there and language and everything else, but they're struggling. And so the last thing that they need is to take money away from them at a time when, okay, there are these challenges, let's take money away. How is that going to make them better? That's his concern, Mike's concern. And what do you say?
Yeah, so again, I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but whenever we start talking about education, we got to start with kids. We can't start with money. We've got to start with kids. I mean, it's always so frustrating to me when we see that teachers don't get the raises that were approved. Well, why? It's because, like Braden said, it's going to pay for a bunch of other things that are not directly affecting kids in the classroom, right? So I'm actually very sympathetic to how much money gets gobbled up, frankly, in Bransford Avenue, by Bransford Avenue. That's where our school board is. But to the caller's question, yeah, what we've actually seen in Florida is really illustrative. So Florida has about 200,000 kids now who participate in programs like this, voucher programs, ESA programs, tax credit scholarship programs. Their public school students are now performing the third best in the country. So that's the kids who didn't take the voucher, right? That's the kids who didn't take the ESA or the tax credit scholarship. The ones who are, quote, left behind are doing better. Now, why is that? That's the magical question. I think what's happened, and the caller prior to this, Ann, mentioned this, when there is a sort of almost magical thing that happens when schools, all schools, public charter, private schools, have to start responding to parent needs in a real way. And there is no accountability like a parent sitting across from an administrator, and that parent can say, you know what, this is just not working for my kid. We're going somewhere else. There's no accountability like that. When that starts happening, at every school, I think the whole system gets better. And I actually think, again, I think we've got some great educators in our public schools. Let's give them some room to run. Let's challenge them a little bit and see what what they can do. I think the best educators are looking forward to this challenge, and they say, hey, we actually can do the same thing that some of these private schools are doing.
Okay, we have to take a break. If you want to call in, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.